House Appropriations Subcommittee on School Aid and Department of Education will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Kelly.
Here.
Representative Jenkins Arno. Representative Markkinen.
Here.
Representative Beeson. Representative Borton.
Here.
Representative Glanville. Representative Steckloff.
Present.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We've got a motion from Representative Markkinen to approve the minutes of March 3rd, 2026 meeting. There being no objections, the minutes are approved. Good morning. We have a couple different presentations today. One, we're going to start with Amira on outcomes-based contracting and effective scalable tutoring. So please come on up, and then following, we're going to have a little discussion on some accounting procedures. So with us today from Amira is Malia Vela, Vice President of Amira Learning, as well as Lori France, Humanities Instructional Support Specialist, Bay City Public Schools. So Timmy, your constituents are here. So ladies, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kelly, and thank you, committee, for having us here this morning with you. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Julie Thiebert, who is our success manager, longtime success manager for Michigan, and has been working with Bay City over the years. We've seen a lot of different things proposed. Appreciate the investment that this state is making in literacy and focusing on supporting students. We've been working with a number of districts here in Michigan over the years, including Bay City. And today we want to really focus the conversation around the proposal in the governor's education budget around high-impact tutoring. As we know, starting in the school year of 27-28, your LEAs will be required to screen all K-3 students for reading difficulties, including the risk of dyslexia. And recently, in connection with this new requirement, MDE released an RFP and approved 2 screening instruments. Ours was one of the instruments that was approved for K-3 screening. We've been approved in a number of different states with similar rigorous requirements. Currently, though, there is no funding for the K-3 screening mandate that's going to be coming into effect in 27-28. And a lot of your LEAs are currently grappling with figuring out what screening tool they're going to be implementing and how they're going to be funding it. There is a funded list for benchmark assessments. Of course, the 2 screening instruments that you've approved also do benchmark assessments. So there seems to be a little bit of competing interests in terms of what's funded versus what's not funded. And the benchmark testing is not required. It's something that's optional. So while the optional assessment tool has been funded, the mandate has not, and there's not been an RFP to reopen the benchmark list. So there is a concern ultimately that your schools are going to have multiple assessment tools rather than one assessment tool, and therefore have multiple data points. The reason that I'm talking about assessments, and you may think, why are we talking about assessments when we're talking about high-impact tutoring, is who receives the high-impact tutoring is going to be determined based off of your K-3 screening assessment, right? So part of the purpose of the landmark legislation that you all passed was to effectively and early identify students for risk of reading difficulties, including risk of dyslexia. That's great. The assessment is really the starting point. So the assessment isn't the goal. We don't want the assessment to take away from instructional minutes. What we want to do is have the assessment itself inform what comes next, meaning inform the interventions that result from this and inform the support that students receive. What we do know is that a majority of your students are struggling with proficiency here in Michigan. And while an investment like $100 million out of the governor's proposed recommendation is great, over the course of 2 years, you are not going to be able to scale that out to reach every single student that flags for risk. And this is an issue that many states have grappled with. High-impact tutoring is fantastic. It's not scalable at consistency. And if you look at the recommendations in terms of how it's defined, it is 1-to-4 ratio during the school day. What this means is that you're either going to have to compromise on finding qualified teachers to provide this support, and it's only going to happen for your most extreme cases or a handful of students that have been flagged for risk, or you're going to have to compromise on the qualifications of the individuals providing the tutoring. It also means that students are going to lose that core instructional time because they're going to be pulled out into these small groups for that high-impact tutoring. And while it's great and does result in impact, it's not going to help every single student that flags for risk or at risk of not being proficient. We have been working with a number of states, and I'll go through that in a little minute, but the governor in her recommendation provides an exception to the definition of high-impact tutoring. Specifically, in the recommendation, it states that applicants that provide evidence of program impact and execute an outcomes-based model would be exempt potentially from the stated definition. So why outcomes-based modeling? Well, oftentimes we see these contracts go through. The contracts are large, and what we are seeing is the purchase of tools. Tools that don't necessarily get used or have an intention of implementation. So with outcomes-based contracting, typically what you see is payment of about 40%, no more than 40% of the cost of the tool up front, and what you pay for is the results. So you don't pay if there are no results and if it's not implemented. There is a center, it's called the Center for Outcomes-Based Contracting through the Southern Education Foundation. I'm a board member for that organization, and they support outcomes-based contracts. There's also a toolkit that's available online with some sample contracts around how it gets modeled out. The goal would be to do this at scale so that your districts don't have to grapple with individually negotiating these contracts and monitoring them. And then built in would be providing a tool to actually allow for screening and one data point for the state to make decisions over time. As I mentioned, Amira was one of the 2 tools that was approved by MDE in the updated list that was published in December. There's one other tool. We've seen similar RFP language that requires rigorous data, higher standards in terms of reliability and validity, meaning accuracy relative to the screening for all of the subgroups. Both of the tools were approved under previous RFPs in other states. They're really high standards. It requires a lot of different data points to be tracked over time. We've also, as I mentioned, been working with a number of states and students across the country. Currently, Amira is working and tutoring 5 million students across the country. We are being used and trusted by thousands of districts and have had billions of minutes read into our tool. I say read because it's an observational assessment, not a computer adaptive assessment. Basically, the computer listens to students as they engage in the act of reading. This means that we get more accurate data in terms of the student's ability. We're also able to provide that data back to educators in real time so that they can see how their students are progressing over time, rather than using stale data from months or weeks before. We're able to track also through the act of the practice and tutoring how the students are performing, which allows educators to make better decisions over time and administrators to make decisions in terms of the use of resources. Independent research has shown that we achieve about 70% faster reading growth. That's equal to or greater than high-dosage tutoring at a fraction of the cost. So if you think about the governor's proposal, Amira is about $20 per student, a little bit more in an outcomes-based setting where we're providing implementation and coaching, which means that for less than 10% of the overall proposed budget, I think it's closer to something like 5%, every single student in Michigan could have access to both the screening tool as well as the tutoring support that comes afterwards in a personalized manner that's adaptive to what they need in their zone of proximal development, and that the data and progress monitoring data goes back to the educators in real time. This would still allow for Michigan to do and engage in high-impact tutoring for students with the most critical needs, but would also allow for every single student to receive support, as well as for state decision makers like yourselves to get data back in a uniform manner so that you can track what's working and what's not working, and also engage with your LEAs in a way where you're talking about one data point and one data set rather than multiple data points. Teachers would benefit from this because they wouldn't have to learn multiple data sets and become data experts in multiple different tests. As students and families move, this is also going to be critical so that families can understand the what comes next and where their students are. As I mentioned, when you're looking at assessments, and you included this in your legislation, you required evidence-based assessments. This aligns with your science of reading principles that guided the legislation. Things that were required were accuracy, reliability, and high NCII ratings. Again, our tool is approved by over 30 different states. There's about 42 states that require universal screening. Over 30 have had their lists open in the last few years, and we've been approved in those states. We are the state-funded screener in several states, including New Mexico, Georgia, Idaho. There's also a subsidy in California, and we are one of the state-funded screeners there. Most importantly, educators can trust this data because of our sensitivity and specificity numbers being so high. Means that we have a relatively high rate of accuracy for screening your K-3 students, so educators can rely on that data. I think it's really important to think about what the classroom environment looks like. I'm a former educator myself. I think what we're used to when we see assessments or tutoring is we see really sterile environments, right? We're used to seeing teachers do these pull-asides that last over the course of several days. There's incidental costs of having a substitute in the room. The screening itself ends up interrupting and disrupting instruction. And that's not what we want. What we want is the screening to inform instruction without taking a ton of time. So what you'll see students, some are sitting crisscross applesauce, some are laying down on the ground, some have headsets, some don't. You don't need to do one-on-one. And again, I think this is an important visual to also understand this is exactly how tutoring can occur with Amira. So you're able to have the entire class get screened or work at the same time. You don't have to do these pull-asides. You don't have to do small group. You could do small group or station rotation. We can build in with that model as well. But there's a lot of options for educators. And the main point being that you can do this and achieve this in under 20 minutes. The overall dosage is under 30 minutes per week in terms of the tutoring and support. And again, it can just fold in seamlessly with the classroom environment without having to disrupt the overall flow. Once we've done the screening, we move straight into the tutoring. So the same tool and instrument can be used to tutor students. As I mentioned, students engage with Amira by reading aloud. And so this really helps because students get the practice, teachers get the data, and overall we see growth over time. And so when you're thinking about making an investment in terms of tutoring, you're going to want to do a couple of different things. One, you're going to want regular data metrics, right? Rather than just the screen, you're going to want to know what the growth rate is and progress over time. So even if you do engage in high impact tutoring with a human tutor, you're going to need some way to measure that. Another thing that you might be looking for that's worth looking into is having a benchmark or progress monitoring tool that can align to your statewide summative, right? We do have a teaming agreement with Smarter Balance. I think that's really important. Having come from and worked in state education agencies, we're often looking at our summatives. That's the end goal, and we do want proficiency relative to that, but we want data metrics that are going to track over time progress towards that proficiency with criterion reference scoring. That's something, again, that our tool does. We think that that's an important thing to look at, especially when you're determining contracts based off of outcomes and results. You're going to want criterion reference measures to look at over time. This is not new technology, so we've heard a lot about different technology over time. This technology has really been based off of decades of research starting back at Carnegie Mellon over 30 years ago. We're being used by districts currently in Michigan, including Detroit Public Schools, including Bay City, who's with us here today. And over time, we see with 30 minutes a week of the supported real-time practice and that's personalized, between 7 to 10 weeks of growth over time, which is pretty significant when you think about a school year lasting about 36 weeks. And when you think about the fact that the majority of your students are going to need support. So the goal is ultimately, yes, high-impact tutoring is great, but you actually want to reduce the number of students in need of that intensive intervention. So the goal is really to come in a tier 1 manner to support students across the board in a personalized way that's scalable and consistent, and then build off of that and support students with intensive intervention as needed. You don't want to over-intervene. It is a thing, especially in kindergarten and first grade. We see over-intervention happening. I saw it when I was a kindergarten and first grade teacher. And what that means is sometimes kids just need a little bit of personalized support. They don't need to get pulled out into small group or things like that and have their learning disrupted. They just might need a little bit of personalized support over time, and we can do that with Amira. Our impact has been shown time and time again. We've done studies relative to state standards. We think that that's something, whenever you're looking at a statewide contract, that's really important, is to measure growth, not just within the tool, but in alignment with your state summative assessment. And so this requires the tracking of longitudinal data over time with larger groups, which is perfect for a statewide contract, but is something that should be done by an independent group to make sure that there is impact over time. This was a study out of the last school year from Texas with their state assessment. Students that read with Amira generally saw several percentage points in gains over time for each grade level. And when we look at the subpopulation and subgroup data that's desegregated, we saw that students that were economically disadvantaged, Black students, and emergent bilingual students saw significant gains outside of a standard deviation. So these are statistically significant gains over the course of the school year, reading with Amira just 30 minutes a week. So not 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a week. I have a quick clip to show just with a student reading with Amira. The main thing here is just that students are able to get that practice in. Teachers and administrators and parents can actually see the students' work afterwards. The volume's not working here. Essentially what you're seeing, is that working now?
No, if you go back to right here.
Oh, there we go. I'm going to start this over again. What you'll see is structured literacy supports, Orton Gillingham style supports. So as you're training your teachers in professional development that's science of reading aligned, you're going to start seeing the interventions used in the tutoring tool that align with that, which is really important. It's still human-centered AI, so the teacher is going to play a significant role being able to look at the data and take action based off of it, as well as review. But as a teacher, you know you can't sit down with every single student throughout the day, so having this ability to scale really makes a difference. So this is all voice-enabled. Students read aloud.
Watch as I move these balls into boxes. Each sound has its own box. K, a, t. There may be more boxes than sounds in the word. Now it's your turn. Use your mouse to move the balls into the boxes and say the sounds of the word. G.
So what we see is the support being provided in real time as students struggle. So they're within their zone of proximal development and working, but they're able to do it in a way that allows for the assistance to be personalized. Oftentimes in classrooms, we see about 5 different grade level spans in a single classroom. So what's great about Amira, if you ever go on a class visit, and I know some of you have, You'll see some students working on this early connected text and decoding. You'll see other students engaged in comprehensive conversations, while other students might be working on foundational skills. And I'm going to hand it over to Lori.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be able to speak to you today. I'm Lori France with Bay City Public Schools. And we've been with Amira since 2020, and we have found great success with some of our most at-risk readers. You'll see on the screen that the number of assessments we've completed, over 110,000 stories have been read, and I'm sure since this data was pulled, it's even higher than that because it's a consistent tool that we use to implement in our classrooms. And how many minutes have been read? Over 664,000. And again, I'm sure that number is continuing to rise because every day our students are interacting with Amira. So you can see how many hours that is. And again, teachers work within that time frame. So it's not that the kids are on the screen all the time. They're adhering to the recommendations of Amira, getting those 30 minutes a week in, so that students are able to experience that growth, and teachers can use that data to form their small groups in class and to get those kids that really need it. Another powerful piece that I do want to lift up that I'm not sure came through yet was that with the students reading out loud, they're also being recorded, and they can teachers can go back and listen to those student recordings. So on their planning times, when they're trying to determine what really happened, not only do they have that data with Amira and beautiful reports that they can pull with a click, which is what teachers need, but they also can go back and listen. And if I can just share a really quick story, last year we had a second grader who was just stumbling all over their words, and in the beginning of the year, and was in child study, and at the end of the year, that the teacher played the beginning of the year recording and the end of the year recording, and the child was fluent, was comprehending, and was above grade level because of their time that they spent with Amira and the data that the teacher had to be able to pull that student. So that is powerful, and we've never experienced that with any of the other assessments where you can actually go back and listen and see that progress happen over time. So you can see the growth that has happened beginning of the year to middle of the year. We're trending in the right direction, and we're having students that are catching up and closing those gaps and enjoying picking up those books more, so that they're actually enjoying reading and are able to do that and comprehend. There's some, again, more trends that you'll notice broken down by grade level here. Thank you. So I don't have my cheaters on. The trends that we see, those strong foundational literacy acceleration in our kindergarten students, and we know that those students, they need that solid foundation in order to be able to build, and that crosses into all content areas. They have to be able to do reading and even math and science and social studies. So we know the importance of having all of those foundational skills and meeting that child exactly where they're at and being able to grow from there. And you'll see that it continues. Second grade, that was the classroom some of you were able to visit, one of our second grade rooms, and that's a really great year because you get into third grade and it just gets deeper and deeper, as you know, and the students really need those skills, so it's important that we get those foundations early. We even have, this goes up through fifth grade, but we even have middle school teachers who are excited and starting to utilize Amira with some of their lowest students and are starting to see success with them as well. Here is the grade level assessment clarification table where you can see how many students moved up, the percentage that stayed the same in the average beginning of the year and then average middle of the year, and how much growth is happening. So you'll see all of the growth levels in that final column. This is a great visual chart that shows you the beginning of the year to the middle of the year growth. And you can see that expand out. And I don't have my glasses on and I don't have it memorized. It's 35% acceleration. I pretend like I can see, I guess, but I can't. The 35% acceleration that we're seeing by the students that are using Amira, that they're continuing on that growth pattern. And that transfers over into other subject areas as well. So I can't say enough about the importance of the students having this experience. And teachers can't sit one-on-one with 30 kids that are sitting in front of them, but Amira can, and then the teachers can get the data and adjust their instruction and get every student what they need. Anything else?
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes. Representative Glanville.
Would you expect any less? Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a number of questions, and it might be worth just having a meeting with you offline. But I'll just kind of lay the foundation here. I always am a little bit concerned when we talk about statewide contracts because I imagine the implementation process for a single school or a single school district where you have that district who has chosen your product and is buying into it. It's a little bit different than when it's available statewide. So can you talk to what that implementation would look like to make sure that all of our schools are doing it with the same fidelity that we're seeing in the base schools example, and what that cost would be?
Yeah, so, and I, previously worked with several labor unions. I was their attorney and policy director for several years and have worked at an SEA as well as a deputy superintendent and understand how important local control is and getting buy-in from all of the folks who are implementing. Generally, what we've seen in state contracting, and there's a number of different ways to do it. Georgia, for example, purchased and subsidized Amira statewide. There was still options, so they could still choose another vendor on the list. It just wasn't subsidized. And we did a lot of work going around to get the buy-in. So I think at scale, you can actually go out and work with folks, show them the tool because it is different from what they're used to, right? When I was teaching, we had DRAs and it was one-on-one, and then we've kind of digitized the scoring. So, going out and doing work, building into work that your Reesas are doing, building into different conferences and things that happen on the reading side to help people understand what's available and make use of it is really important. Generally, the cost is going to be 10 times more if you go pure local control. So, for example, in California, they're funding their screener at about $40 million a year, and that's for about 1.2 million students. So if you think about the cost just of the screener versus if they had just purchased a statewide contract with one of the vendors, it would have been a fraction of the price. We are the only tool that's scalable in terms of being able to screen the entire class. So districts that have opted to go that route, what they've found is that one, they get more instructional minutes back. Two, teachers aren't having to spend 3 or 4 hours of PD time learning to administer an assessment. They can actually spend the PD time getting trained in the science of reading, getting other supports. So what we find generally is teacher buy-in over time. And to Lori's point, we find teachers asking more and more, hey, how come I don't have this?
Yeah, no, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I get that part. I'm just curious, like that process of making sure that each school has that a person on the ground that is going to come in and support as they are trying to adopt.
Yep.
Is kind of my question, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, we also have a team that supports schools here in Michigan. So the way that we generally support is we have a pod for each state. So there's a manager or director for the pod, somebody like Julie, who comes in and oversees a team of people. And we do a mixture of in-person and virtual support, lots of office hours every week because every district has different PLC times and things like that. And then making sure that we take into account, we do regional trainings, all of those different things. And then we have live support help so that they know exactly who to call and it's rooted in a single person. And that's built into the cost. So we don't believe in additional add-ons or charging districts for training. It's all rolled into the license cost.
All right. And like I said, I won't belabor all my questions, but another concern I have with the statewide contract piece is, we're seeing Amira, and it looks like an absolutely fantastic product. I'm wondering, who your competitors are.
We are in a class of our own. I mean, there are sole source contracts for other states for us, specifically because we're the only voice-enabled tool that really has all the research backing. We also have our specific LLM in terms of training for error detection and things like that has been developed over time and is unique to us. There are other tools out there that do, grade level support, things like that. Most other tools don't have the independent research backing that we do, or the alignment with state standards with criterion reference scoring the way that we do. So there are a lot of unique aspects of the product that other people might be able to try to replicate one or two things, but they haven't been able to put it all together.
And how do you interact with other LMS and all the various products that schools and teachers are trying to use? What are who do you integrate with? And again, you can just get me a list if that's much easier.
Well, we aren't a publisher, but we can align and ingest curricula from different publishers. So UFly, we've aligned to Into Reading. We've aligned to a number of there's 11 different curricula, high quality instructional materials that have been approved by the state, and we've got agreements with a number of those different publishers. Always happy to partner with more, but it really comes down to the district asking their publisher to partner with us so that we can do the alignment. And at a base level, we can do the alignment. It's just whether or not we can ingest their materials so that teachers can just access the materials within our reports. That is possible for, I think, half of the list of published high-quality materials here.
And so a school district that's using one that's not on the list would need to work with that company to have them work with your company to align so that they could use your product with fidelity?
Usually, they don't need to do it to use our product. It does make the teacher experience better because it shortens the amount of teacher prep time needed, where they can link directly into the materials. We can do the alignment with scope and sequence. We don't need to partner to do that, but the benefit to teachers comes with the ability to just click in and access the actual supplemental instructional material. We have base materials that are science of reading backed within Amira as a default. And then, as I mentioned, we've partnered with a number of the publishers. It would just be a simple letter from the district asking the publisher to release it because the district they've purchased the licensing for the curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Beeson?
Thank you very much for being here. Sorry, I'm getting over cold. Chair, and thank you for a quick question. You know what my question is, right, you guys, women? Amira is a great teacher, but where is Adam on the customer service side? I'm just kind of wondering, because, we have, and I saw all those little people sitting in the chairs, and half of them are boys and half of them are girls. I'm just throwing that out there because in the teaching world, I actually got to pick the teachers because I was in the school board, and I wanted to make sure that my son and my daughter had a male teacher sometime in their experience. What? And just because there's not a lot of them. And it's different, so I was just wondering when Adam shows up, I'm curious, because my daughter looks just like Amira. Yeah. Color hair, like she is, this is a picture of her, she's at work today, and I sent a picture, I'm like, they're here, they're giving a presentation while you're at the bank working today, so everything else is great.
We do have a number of different avatars. So there is a different version of Amira that looks kind of like Dora the Explorer's grown up that is sometimes used with our younger learners. There's the version that you saw today. There's also options to not have an avatar. So for some of our older students that don't want to be speaking to or reading to a character, although they like practicing with Amira because there's no shame in it, right? They're not performing for an adult that they might be fearsome of. But I hear your point about having a male presenting.
And
version.
you actually have some males when the teachers, you sit and listen to the teachers because you didn't show the pictures of the teachers, which
Yes.
was really important that people see that it's not a computer, it's actually a person that is pronouncing. So I did sit there long enough and I saw both males and females. I was just wondering if Adam was coming in the picture.
part of what Amira does is they do have a champions program and an ambassadors program, and I'm a member of both of those. Ambassadors looks at like raw student data, ideas that are out there, and this past summer they do have a mock of Amir, his name is, and he is a male avatar, and so I know they're thinking about that. I don't know what stage it's at, and maybe I'm unbagging something I shouldn't be, but I did see it, and but there is something out there that they're at least thinking of it. The thought is behind that, and then we're allowed to give feedback on that. And just so you know, I gave feedback that I thought that would be really important for them to be able to choose the avatar between Amir or Amira.
Just because some people don't sit in seats very well, and it's just kind of nice to see that, so appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And thank you both for your presentation. Very enlightening. Appreciate it. Up next, we're going to take testimony on teacher certification fines. With us today is Gene Pierce, Superintendent of Tuscola ISD, and Bruce Tapio, Superintendent of Norway Vulcan Area Schools. So we got a little of the Lower Peninsula and a little of the Upper Peninsula represented today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kelly and committee. My name is Gene Pierce. I'm the superintendent at Tuscola Intermediate School District. I'm here to address an issue that has continued to be an unfair financial consequence on some school districts due to clerical errors that resulted in exorbitant fines for the district. I'm joined by fellow Superintendent Bruce Tapio from Norway Vulcan Schools, and Bruce is going to share a story about one of the fines he received in his district. According to the current budget line item 6, subsection 8, which you have, appropriately placed means holding a valid Michigan educator credential with the required grade range and discipline or subject area for the assignment as defined by the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Class means either of the following as applicable: a period of time in one day when pupils and an individual who is appropriately placed under a valid certificate, substitute permit, authorization, or approval issued by the department are together for instruction taking place. This subsection does not apply for 24-25 and 25-26 school years. For the 24-25 and 25-26 school years, only a period of time in one day when 24 pupils and a certified teacher, a teacher engaged to teach under subsection 1233B of the Michigan School Code, or an individual working under a substitute valid permit, authorization, or approval issued by the department are together for instruction. The current executive recommendation eliminates section I. The removal of this section is an attempt to minimize the number of issues and subsequent fines that are created when a certified teacher is placed as a teacher of record but was not appropriately placed based on section A. This will help minimize the occurrences of unintended class issues, but do nothing to address the inequitable fines required by the district who make an unintended omission or mistake regarding the teacher of record. The practice of exorbitant fines assessed by MDE to local districts for errors regarding teacher certification came to my attention in 2022 when Kingston Community Schools, one of my smallest districts in my area, received a fine for $85,136 for a clerical error regarding one teacher. This included a deduction from Kingston for $77,000 for FTE fines and $8,000 for a salary deduction. Keep in mind, Kingston is a small Class D school. Their total budget's about $8.8 million. They have limited staff to do all of the things that need to be done, and they wear multiple hats to accomplish all their responsibilities. This district was never previously fined for any type of teacher infraction as far as certifications. In this situation, Kingston hired a new elementary teacher with a recent degree from an accredited Michigan university. The teacher was appropriately placed in a classroom covered by her degree. The teacher registered for the Michigan test for teacher certification, and due to COVID, the test session was canceled. The teacher registered for a subsequent test session. In the meantime, schools were released by legislative action to go back to school. When classes resumed, through a clerical error, the district neglected to complete a substitute teacher permit, which is $45. Due to this oversight, Kingston was fined for $85,000. The teacher went on to successfully pass the MTTC test in 2022 and continues to teach successfully at Kingston Community Schools. Kingston was able to appeal the fine through a lengthy process with MDE and had the fine reduced to $83,000 from the original $85,000. This involved paying attorney fees to defend the district and many hours of staff time to prepare for the appeal process. These fines are not unique to any particular school district or area. Local school districts throughout the state in virtually every ISD have received these fines totaling millions of dollars of lost funding for schools. The following are examples of teacher certification fines assessed to the districts. You may know some of these districts. Bingham Public Schools received a fine for almost $33,000. Fremont Public Schools, $18,000. Melvindale Northern Allen Park, $158,000. Trenton Public Schools, $109,000. Weberville, $32,000. Lake City, $35,000. In Detroit Public Schools, $272,000. These are for clerical errors regarding teacher certification. The MDE website has a list of districts that received certification penalties and appealed the process. We do not see any list of total number of districts who have received fines and what the amount of those fines have been. This website is incomplete and has not been updated since 2022. The Michigan Association of Intermediate School Administrators organization has been challenging this process of assessing exorbitant fines to local districts since 2022. Many proposals have been made to and rejected by MDE, including a process for implementing corrective action plans and progressive discipline to districts violating teacher certification issues. The corrective action plan is something we've been doing for years with special ed, but we can't get it going for something like this. We are incredibly frustrated as attempts to repair this issue have dragged on since 2022. Many school districts continue to experience excessive fines. The school districts are not attempting to avoid responsibility. School districts go to great lengths to ensure that quality teachers are in front of kids. The MDE pupil accounting manual is complex and ever-changing, and I brought a copy of that with me today. This is the pupil accounting manual. One mistake in this manual results in an $86,000 fine for a size D school district. That's pretty intense. Educators are proposing to collaborate with MDE and resolve a process currently that is not helping students in school districts throughout the state. Occasionally, clerical errors are going to be made. We need a process that better educates local school districts and collaborates with MDE to ensure these teacher certification fines do not impact the student learning for each district. I'm going to turn it over to Bruce. He's got a great story for you this morning of how their district received one of these fines. Bruce?
Do you guys mind if I stand up? Because I got 16 hours behind my vehicle to get here back. So I drove down from Norway, Michigan to talk to you guys about this fine business. Norway is a school district with about 592 kids, pre-K through 12. In 2018, a clerical error was made in the rep. If you understand what the rep is, that's our report to the MDE, that we had all certified teachers. The button was pushed, rep went on. In 2020, it was reported that we did not have a certified teacher. The certified teacher was a young man who came out of out of Michigan Technological University and Northern with a degree in mathematics and English. Crazy combination, but he did it. And he was teaching full-time without a worry. While he was teaching and all this fine business was going on, he got certified. He took his MTTC test, passed it, and became a fully certified teacher. But the fine came anyway. That one was for $87,000 for not having that MTTC test finished, and a button was accidentally pushed by a secretary. Not accidentally, but in error, okay? The next year, a second fine showed up for another teacher who wasn't certified, who was a CTE teacher teaching a class of mathematics. And under the understanding CTE credits are allowed, or math credits are allowed under CTE, another $82,000. So total money that was taken from the district in a 2-year period with the lawyer fees and the rest for the appeal, which didn't work. It was just a lot of stuff, was $166,000. Now, if you don't understand small districts, I'll give you a quick hint. If we hire a teacher, we bring them in at step one, which is their contract stuff, they make about $42,000 a year. Add insurance was $27,000, FICA, retirement. Their total package is right around $100,000. So we're talking close to 2 teachers we could have hired to cover what we need to cover, but instead we're cramming kids into classes so that we have certified teachers. Right now, I have 4 teachers who are under, of all things, a sub permit. And she mentioned that, a sub permit, $45 to get a sub permit, and they're allowed to teach versus the full MTTC test and the full degree. I don't know if that sounds goofy to you, but it doesn't register well with me, but we have to do it. So the first thing I did when I took over this job, I took it in June this summer. By the way, I retired 5 years ago, and in that 5 years, I forgot about what this job entailed, and I took it again. I should have looked at my old notes. So when I was invited to come down here, I thought, why not? You know, I met Mr. Kelly a while back, and if I'll remember, I'll send you an email. I'll remember when it was. And I know Mr. Bonak, and these are all local UP people who, and Mr. Mark and I know and love the name, by the way. Finlanders are key to the UP. They truly are. So we look at these fines, and we're still trying to figure out how to recover from $166,000 whack over something that could have been taken care of by simply saying, you made a mistake, fix it. Okay, we'll go in and get the sub permit, fine. We made it twice. And was that punishable by double fines? Probably not. It's like, go in and get the sub permit for that teacher. I don't know where all of this other stuff comes from because I don't do politics very well. And if you listen to the way that I speak, I really have a hard time with politics a lot of times because it interferes with what we're trying to do. When we take money from a school, any money, I don't care what it is, you take from the children. That take is automatic. You've removed money that we could spend on educating our kids. And my job, my function in life, since I became a teacher back in the mid-90s, is to care for the children. I don't know where Mr. Beeson went, but I am a male teacher. I taught industrial arts and aviation maintenance for schools for many years. Then I became an administrator. Sometimes I had to scratch my head on what I was thinking. Teaching was easy. This other stuff is not so easy sometimes. But I was offered by Gene to come up here and talk to you guys, and I jumped at it because first, this is not something I get to do. This is a whole different game for me. It truly is. I don't speak to a lot of politicians other than Ed McBroom. I talk to him at the fair every year. He drives me crazy, and then I leave without saying something stupid. But I needed to come down here and at least talk to you guys and let you know that I don't think that I know the word fair is unfair. It's not a good word to use, but I don't think the fines that are put on schools for making a clerical error or having a perfectly certified or qualified teacher coming out of college teach without that certification should be worth $166,000. And I see that you're looking at me. I know you're hearing me, and then I have to leave it at your court. Right? I did my serve, and now it's up to you guys to do whatever it is you do to make this functional, because this is not functional. So I do want to thank you guys for doing what you do down here. We are aware in the UP that you are here. I hope you're aware that we are in the UP, and we need you guys to do what you have to do to protect us and keep us safe up that way too. A couple of teachers asked me to say some things, and I chose not to. because they're political, and I don't really want to. But I do want you to know that we do appreciate what y'all do down here. Okay? I think that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah.
The proposal you have before you is what was presented to the House and the Senate last year after numerous discussions with MDE to fix this problem. The language would limit fines and require district education, which is the key to this. We need better education so that we don't make the mistakes. Upon the first occurrence of an accounting, appropriate placement, or teacher of record class mistake, and seeks to implement a common sense framework where accidental clerical errors are not treated the same as a fashion of repeated mistakes. We believe inclusion of this language is in addition to the proposed changes referenced above in the executive budget recommendations will allow educators to spend more time focusing on the needs of our students and less time fighting with the state over paperwork and excessive fines. On my way here this morning, I live over in Frankenmuth. On my way here this morning, I went through a construction zone. There was a sign that caught my attention. It said, "Hit or kill a construction worker, $7,500 fine." We had a clerical error, a box that wasn't checked, a $45 permit that wasn't approved, and we got an $86,000 fine. The fines don't add up. Again, we're not looking to not be held responsible, but we're looking for a process that works for kids. Again, appreciate all that this committee does, and if there's any questions we can answer, we're happy to do that.
Thank you both for your presentation. Representative Glanville, quickly.
Yep, thank you. I fully support what you're talking about here. And I guess question is maybe more for the chair. Is there a possibility for us to take a look at other certification clerical errors that maybe fall in this bucket? And I'm speaking from personal experience. The reason I'm a legislator is because due to a clerical error, I am no longer a certified teacher. And when the state offered me, when I left the classroom because of that, the state offered me $1,200 to come back, and I said, too late, I've got something else going. And the irony, similar to your irony, I ended up teaching teacher prep courses, preparing people to teach classes that I was not qualified to teach because I didn't have the certificate. So fully support unraveling this mess of spaghetti and would hope that we might be able to look at some of the other errors that are there.
I'd be interested in clarifying all the above. I think that this has clearly been a problem for a number of years and has gotten out of hand. And I think what we need to do is everything we can to get back to. This was all about trying to showcase. We want the department to be, high performance, not based on compliance. And I think that that's been the battle, quite honestly, between MDE and the school, schools at large or writ large. It was just this, I think, less supportive and more punitive than they need to be, and so that's why we're bringing this kind of forth. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Oh, Representative Borton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. When a school district is fined, where does that money go, and who benefits from that?
It's our understanding that it goes to the general fund. That's our understanding of it.
Okay.
The department will be up next.
All right, thank you.
To explain that. I hope you have that answer, Olivia. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Much.
Appreciate it. And nice to see all of you put faces to names.
Okay, should we have the MDE maybe come out?
No, let's
Okay. We need to go at ease. We've got some technical problems. Our next presenter is on Zoom, so we need to get that taken care of.
Test 1, 2. Nicole, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
We can hear you as well. 1 second, please. Stand by.
Thank you very much, Soren. Welcome back. Our next testimony is on pupil accounting from Nicole Gasper, CEO of West Michigan Aviation Academy, with some additional, perhaps horror stories of the pupil accounting. Please take it away. Thank you.
Chairman Kelly and members of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on School Aid and the Michigan Department of Ed, thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. As Rep. Kelly mentioned, my name is Nicole Gasper, and I'm the CEO at the West Michigan Aviation Academy, located at the Gerald R. Ford International Airport right here in Grand Rapids. We are a public charter high school serving 620 young people. Well, I feel like I'm going to be saying some of the similar things that you've just heard because our stories, it seems, are kind of coming out of the woodwork now. My example is aligned with what was already shared in that we know we're trying to keep high quality teachers in classrooms, and we know that there's legislation that exists that intends to help us do so. However, the way the legislation exists has also had the opposite effect for us and has punished, a school who has tried to do the right thing and continues to make it harder to keep excellent teachers in front of young people. So a few years ago, we had a highly respected veteran teacher actually come out of retirement to teach high school PE and health. He had more than 30 years of successful teaching experience, a master's degree in outdoor education, extensive coaching experience, and had been certified in social studies. And quite honestly, he was the best PE and health teacher we had had in over a decade without actually holding the credential at the time. Well, because it was the end of his career, it certainly did not make sense for us to ask him to go back, take college credits to get an endorsement in PE because he's had a very successful career already. And so instead, we applied through the Michigan Department of Ed system, MOEX, for a full year basic substitute permit. Well, we ended up having just a wonderful year with him in the classroom, and we decided to strengthen his qualifications by enrolling him in an industry recognized personal trainer certification program, of which he became credentialed. And then he also took the Michigan teacher exam in both PE and health and successfully passed that on the first time around. So while we were planning for the upcoming year, we connected with the Michigan Department of Ed to learn that he did not qualify for a renewal of that substitute permit because he was not enrolled in a teaching initial teacher certification program, even though he had already been a certified teacher for over 30 years in multiple states, including Michigan. So we were advised to apply for a daily substitute permit and thought we had corrected the issue. Well, ironically, several hours later on the same day, we received an email, a compliance audit email from the department that later led to a $160,000 fine, which is just frankly insane. And so, while we acknowledge, just like I heard from some of my fellow peers, that we did check the wrong box in the MOEX system. It was an honest mistake, and we brought ourselves forward in good faith by contacting the MDE to figure out, okay, what do we need to do now? Fast forward during our appeal with the department, we learned that they are required to follow up under MCL 388-1615 to investigate all certification concerns and apply penalties retroactively and that literally their hands are tied and they have zero discretion to help districts and schools correct their errors, even when the mistake, like ours, is self-reported. And so obviously this situation continues to highlight where the policy breaks down. We believe we were following the rules. You know, here we have a master's level educator, outdoor ed masters, teaching high school PE and health, and yet we paid a $160,000 fine. And, you know, to rub salt in the wound, we actually learned that had we filed for a different permit, we wouldn't have had a penalty at all. And so, you know, while Michigan has done a great job of looking for alternative pathways to get business and industry professionals in the teaching field, we're still not there yet. And, you know, I have the responsibility and the privilege of running a very innovative, unique high school focused on aviation and engineering. And as you can imagine, with all of the efforts around incorporating STEM education across Michigan and all of the dollars that are being pumped in to help support that effort, this policy as it exists will continue to stifle innovation. I'm highlighting an example with PE and health. Imagine the impact as we're trying to compete with business and industry to get engineers and aviators into the classrooms. Imagine how these added hoops are just not going to allow us to innovate. And so obviously I'm talking to you about a perfect storm. So we had made the error, clerical error, just like what you heard previously. It was missed by our ISD auditors. It was missed for the entire school year and then discovered during the summer planning when we reached out to the department. We disclosed this situation. And because it was a retroactive penalty and our PE health teacher, as most probably do, served many, many children, we end up with a $160,000 fine. And so even more frustrating though, and I appreciate hearing from Mrs. Glanville that as a former educator, she can appreciate, because it happened to her, a clerical error prevents great people from staying in the classroom. And so our current situation is we have an incredible veteran educator who's now enrolled in a continuing education classes because we have to jump through the hoops. And he's taking classes that he could be teaching other people. Like it's really disappointing because we're saying we value these technicalities rather than adults who have really distinguished, honorable careers in the teaching field. So our school, and again, similar to the colleagues that just presented before me, we've had over 15 years of clean accountability. And just like they mentioned, we believe in accountability and we expect it, but not when the proportionality makes 0 sense. So again, I just want to highlight that not only is the financial consequence an issue, but also if we're looking to continue to innovate and attract and or keep highly qualified adults in the classrooms, we've got to look at what those alternative pathways are to include potentially giving the department some discretion. Frankly, in this specific situation, when you have a veteran teacher of over 30 years from multiple states with an outdoor education and extensive coaching background, it should be as simple as demonstrating these credentials, demonstrating the experience, and then being blessed to stay in the classroom rather than having to go back to taking, teaching 101. So I just respectfully ask that you continue to work on these policies so that we can do our best work here in the schools. So thank you so much for allowing me to testify this morning.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. Thanks for your testimony. Seeing no questions, I think we'll just get directly to MDE. With us today is Livia Ponte, Legislative Liaison, Michigan Department of Ed, Kelly Brzezowski, Director of Office of Educator Excellence, and Diane Golzinski, Deputy Superintendent of Business, Health, and Library Services. Welcome, ladies. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kelly, and thank you for the invitation to come in and present this morning. So as you just said, I'm Olivia Ponte. I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Michigan Department of Education. With me, I have Kelly. She is the Director of the Office of Educator Excellence, and I have Diane, and she's the Deputy Superintendent over Business, Health, and Library Services. And I just want to head off the first thing, the first question I already heard, which is where does the money go for these fines? And I can confirm it lapses back into the school aid fund. It is school aid fund, not general fund, so the department never sees any of that money. We can't benefit from school aid fund. And I really appreciate hearing the testimony this morning. Like Jean said, we've worked with them to try to figure out a solution to this issue. In fact, we raised this in the legislative priority letter that we sent you on January 14th of this year, so we agree that this is a law that we need to look at. But like Nicole said, the department can only follow the law, which is why our hands are tied, and we don't have any flexibility outside of what's in the law. So we really appreciate you guys taking a look at this today, and we're happy to further collaborate on how to serve our districts and our kids. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Hello, and nice job on the last name. My name is Kelly Brozanski. I am the Director of the Office of Educator Excellence, and as Olivia said, thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. As you may know, Goal 7 of Michigan's Top 10 Strategic Education Plan is to increase the numbers of certified teachers in areas of shortage. In order to do so, districts need access to qualified, certified, prepared teachers. However, the penalty for certification noncompliance must not further restrict the ability for districts to properly staff their schools. MDE is committed to supporting districts and agrees that the penalty assessed when an educator is mistakenly placed in the wrong classroom or outside of the validity of their credentials is often too high. This is, as Olivia said, why we included this ask in our legislative priority letter that we sent in January. The penalties associated with certificate noncompliance have been modified many times over the last several years as we've worked to try to get this right. It is important to understand that there are two different financial implications at play: salary and FTE, or full-time equivalency. Salary deductions are currently set at 50% of the educator's salary if they are out of compliance, generally outside of school count days. FTE adjustments are based on biannual reporting associated with school count day and are based on per pupil counts. In addition, that FTE financial impact is much greater than the salary penalties. Schools are no longer subject to double penalties, and they can only incur either salary or FTE for the same employment. Additionally, the salary penalties, as I said, were reduced to 50%, where they were previously at 100%, and 100% would only apply for continued noncompliance for the same employment. So together, we fixed the double penalty. We did the 50% on the salary penalty, and now we think perhaps it is time to address those FTE adjustments. Part of the reason that this penalty is so high is because reporting only happens twice a year, and we cannot provide information to districts about their local hiring until they tell us who's in those positions. So to address this, MDE and CEPI created the Teacher Certification Verification Report, which can provide districts with insights into their staffing compliance. Districts who update their staffing changes immediately in our data systems can monitor their own compliance and make adjustments. This is also why we submitted language included in the executive budget recommendation to require the reporting of any staffing changes within 30 days. While we agree that the penalty is very high and can have a negative impact on districts, having an uncertified teacher in front of learners can also have a negative impact on student outcomes, including student safety, as it relates to wrap-back notifications for districts related to educators who commit crimes that are enumerated in statute. We need to make sure that our students are safe, and so we look forward to collaborating on the language to determine the best way to put students first.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. I'm the other ski at the table, Golzinski, and you did a great job pronouncing it. Thank you. So you had a presentation last week on the weighted funding model, and the slides from MASA and MASSP, which are your superintendent associations and your secondary school principals associations, they pointed out that in 2013, the budget bill had 60 sections, 60, whereas in 2025, there were 111 sections. In 2026, there are 122 individual grants to the field. Not only is this an administrative challenge for districts, but there is a large administrative burden on the department as well. Within a month of the budget passing on October 7th, 2025, we had 1/3 of the grants out the door. Those were primarily formula and not competitive. We prioritized per pupil allocations and at-risk funding to best assist districts statewide. Within 2 months, or by the beginning of December, we had 40% of the formula and designated grants out the door, and we're starting on competitive grant applications being available. By the beginning of January 2026, we had released funding for 70 of the 122, or just under 60% of the line items. All remaining grants are waiting on Nexus application development and testing and completion of the partner and fiduciary agreements. In years when the budget is passed on or around June 30th, we have been able to have a significant number out the door by October 1st. In February 2024, we had 58% complete within 30 days of the new fiscal year and 86% within 60 days. In FY25, we had 68 complete within 30 days and 89% complete within 60 days. So as you can see, the timing of the budget completion by the legislature directly affects our ability to get funding out to local districts. Another limiting factor will always be the number of staff and the lack of administrative funding to support getting funds out the door. We have one person who processes all grants, no matter if they are formula, competitive, or directed in the State School Aid Act. We have one person who works to create competitive grant applications in Nexus for state funding and another for federal funding. Typically, there are one, maybe two, program office folks responsible for designing and testing those grant applications. Therefore, when there are multiple grant applications in each budget, we must prioritize which applications are developed first and work through that priority list as fast as possible. We also need to be sensitive to what the field can handle at one time. We've been asked to have application due dates staggered to give the field time to appropriately respond. We have done that. We have been asked to have one system for where local districts can find and apply for grant opportunities. We've done that. We have Nexus, and we also now have the grants repository available where districts can find all grants. As with most state departments, our number of staff and funds for those types of activities are decreasing every year. As a department, we do not receive sufficient funding to fully cover all state activities, which is an audit risk, as we are using federal funds to cover state activities. Federal funds are also on the decline. In addition, we are limited each year to the number of budget requests the department can submit, and are forced to choose between requests that support the work of our staff so that we can be more efficient and timely versus those proposals that directly prioritize student learning and putting students first, such as making letters training mandatory or expanding career and technical education opportunities for students. Ultimately, we will always try to prioritize what puts students first. Thank you.
And I just want to clarify that the two presentations, similar but not related. We understood the ask to be, first on the teacher certification fine, but then also at large, just grants. So just want to put that out there, but we're happy to take any questions on either topic.
Thank you. Yes. You mentioned the SEPI fix, or that you're working with SEPI, that they can self-report on their own. Is that in real time?
There may be some element of batching as an overnight, but it is generally real time, yes.
Okay, all right. And then my second question is, I would welcome MDE support on the elimination of categoricals. So whenever we perhaps attempt to roll things up, it'd be nice to hear attaboy from the Michigan Department of Ed. Representative Borton.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Thanks for your presentation today, and thank you for your quick answer on my question. You mentioned that the funds lap back into the school aid fund. Do you have an accounting over year by year, maybe the last 10 years, how much has actually been collected? I'm sure probably people in this committee would be interested in that number. I was interested to hear Rep. Glanville's story on how she wound up as a legislator. I had a very similar example with a department, not with MDE, but with another state department with a ridiculous fine. Mine was resolved in court. Obviously, a lot of attorney fees involved. But I'll tell you, going through that experience is a very big motivator to bring you here to Lansing. And what's interesting is all these years later, I now chair their budget. So you got to be really careful how you treat people in the state and treat them fairly. And it sounds like people aren't being treated fairly right now. So thank you.
Yeah, and I can just say I don't have the numbers at my fingertips like I did the first answer, but I will commit to getting that to you and to the committee.
Thank you.
Representative Glanville?
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. I always appreciate the work of MDE that I've, and collaborating with you over the years. I wanted to circle back to the idea, it really caught my attention when you said there's only one person who handles the grants and then two people who handle the application and bug testing and all the things. How many how much, I guess it would be, I would love to know how much time is spent on those tasks and how many FTEs really should be allocated to that work, as long as that is the process for our budget, understanding that as we continue to move more into a weighted formula, that work might drop off. But where are we today and what would be adequate staffing?
I'd be happy to do some analysis for you and get that back to you.
Great, thanks.
Yes, Representative Jenkins-Arno.
I just have a question about the fines, and I was just wondering, I know they're, besides being very high, I'm wondering how are they determine the amount, because it looked like in the presentation before that they had a list of the different amounts for different schools, and they're quite different for each one, so I'm just curious as to why are they set, first of all, so high, and then how are they different from district to district?
So as a reminder, there are two different sections that apply to the penalties. One of them is based on a teacher's salary, and so it is essentially how many days were they out of compliance in this position. So how many days were they providing instruction, were they employed by the school as a teacher, and what was the salary that was paid to them during that period of time. That is the salary portion of it. For the FTE adjustment portion of it, it's more of a forward funding sort of deal. So in order to access per pupil funding, you have to have a class, and that class requires a teacher to be with the students. And that section that was read in earlier testimony today about at a time when a teacher and a student are together and instruction is taking place, that is what defines a class. And so if that is not in place, then those are the funds that are at risk, are those FTE funds for that class.
And then just a follow-up, how quickly are the schools notified that they're out of compliance? Or is that a quick turnaround? Because, if it's a clerical error, you might not realize that you made the mistake.
We try to let them know as soon as we find out. That's why you hear a lot of these stories about 4 hours later, I got a phone call or something along those lines. We're trying to make sure that they have the situation under control in terms of getting a permit to resolve the problem, to avoid further penalties. The problem that we experience is that we don't know who is employed in those schools until that reporting comes back to us. So until they do that rep reporting that was referenced earlier, MDE can't notify them of out of compliance because we don't know they're out of compliance. So they have the most information about their local schools. And so that's why we felt that report was such a useful tool to be able to give them that at a glance first time chance to try to make things right. But our first goal is always to try to make sure that the deductions don't continue to increase and that we can help them resolve the problem, whether it's putting a different teacher in, whether it's getting a different credential, whether it's developing a co-teaching system, something that can get them to make sure that they have a way to move forward while everything else is taking place.
Thank you again. Just to follow up a little bit on Representative Glanville's, it sounds, I was shocked too to hear one, doing a whole grants, and two, to review. And it seems to me that certainly take a look at, or a case of misallocation of resources and personnel. I mean, you've got, hundreds, people there that might otherwise be doing something else, that maybe you need to put some more people on this task.
I'd be happy to have that conversation with you,
All right.
the federal versus state, absolutely.
Appreciate that. Anyway, thank you again for your presentation, everybody, today. Hopefully, we got to air some grievances, and that sounds to me like a department that's trying to be as responsive as they can, and we'll see if we can't do better moving forward. Seeing no further business, meeting adjourned.